So YouTube's telling me that I'm live. Never done this before. Eh, nobody's gonna come, so I'm just gonna record like I'm recording. But I thought I'd experience this because hey, you gotta experience new things. I had an interesting experience since the last video. My dear friends Jefferson, Darce encouraged me to try something new. Try something different, switch things up. And kind of I was pushing on them a little bit, but then they pushed it back on me and we ideated a little bit. And one of the ideas that stuck inspired me to just start over from scratch, like throw out the screenplays I've written, throw out there's two episodes I've written so far, throw those out, not like delete them like they're there, but just throw them out of my mind, throw out the story bones, all the structure. And I guess the structure is a little less out of mind, but for the purpose of this exercise, that it was out. And my thought was, and the instructions were to just write something new characters, whatnot. I kept the same names and relationships, so there's still a Travis and an Emily, and they're still siblings, and their parents are the same names, and their friends are the same people. But I just started in a very, very different place. And the idea that actually Jefferson inspired me with this idea of how we imagine ourselves being more important or playing certain roles in life, in our world and interacting with our friends, especially as children. And then what if like Travis has this thing that he does, and then that kind of melds into the real world, and maybe there's this blurry line. That's not really where it ended up going. But that idea really did draw me back to my own childhood. My dad was a pastor. We frequently went to places, and probably, Dad, if you're listening, sorry. Sometimes I didn't need to hear that sermon again, and I was bored stiff. And I would just close my eyes and put my head up against the pew and go to a completely different place. For me, it was frequently some kind of dramatic world, disaster fantasy, right? There was usually some role of helping or being important to some girl that I had a crush on that I played. Although as I was writing this, I realized that the fantasy that I drew from was actually one where she was kind of the hero, or at least she was a badass and I wasn't. Anyway, it's kind of interesting. Maybe nicely modern. I don't know. Anyway, I went into this. I started the whole thing with this fantasy land that I'd imagined when I was a kid, as if Travis is having this, and then he's being pulled out of that, and he's in class. And then there's a couple interactions that he has that I think are rather interesting, but they're all based on experiences I had as a kid. And I wrote this up. It's probably like an 8-page script, just short, kind of a replacement for the whole intro sequence to Touch that I'd previously written, where they're playing hide and go seek tag, and they have this little tiff, and I really liked it. I really liked what I wrote this time, and it set me free to look at the work I've done over the last entire year of writing and trying to learn how to write screenplays well. And go, you know what? I really am not feeling it. And maybe there's an element of it's been going for a long time. I don't know. I'm still figuring that out. But I think it's also just an element of it's just too tame, it's too safe, and it's not really what I know. And that seems to matter. Like, I had this realization about myself. I'm not sure that I'm like the original artist. I don't make up things that nobody's ever heard of. Maybe nobody does, but I know I don't, at least not very well. But I can take pieces from many different places and put them together to synthesize something new. And that was what I was doing. I was drawing on my own experience to create this new Travis character who's a different person, reimagining his friends, reimagining the stage of their relationships. And it was really energizing for me, and also very vulnerable, because I was writing things from my life, and it was interesting how I felt that. Like, I had my wife read it, and I was really nervous about that, and we actually had a little bit of a argument about some of it. I think because I was so sensitive about it. I mean, we dug into it until we figured out what it was, and that's pretty much what it was. It's just sensitive. But then Jefferson and Darce read it as well and had positive feedback. It was by no means perfect or well. I had typos and everything all over the place because I just wrote it and then shared it. But there was something about it that was better than what's currently there. And I think that the lesson I learned from that is to embrace my reality, that I seem to do best writing, not writing reality. I'm still writing fiction, right? But I'm drawing on these things that I'm intimately familiar with, and I want to do a lot more of that. I was pleased when Jefferson and Darce said, just keep writing. Don't worry about the rest of it. Just keep writing, because frankly, that's what I want to do. I also felt a little bit intimidated because after Jefferson read my script, he was just laughing and laughing, and I respect his opinion quite a lot. Don't quote me on that, Jefferson. And got distracted here. I was trying to figure out this live stream thing is what it's showing me, but yeah, it gave me a lot of joy to have written something that tickled somebody else. And I don't think that anything I've written really didn't really do that. It was pretty lame. And I think that there's part of me is like, oh my goodness, this might be the pinnacle of my career. I need to stop while I'm ahead. But I think what really it is that I'd kind of hit a ceiling. I learned a lot writing those first 2 episodes and imagining this huge episodic story and trying to structure it out. And then I set it all aside and started over and drew on the things that I knew, the things from Touch that I knew, as well as things elsewhere, and put it together to create something that I loved even more. And I don't know how many times that's going to happen. I don't know how many iterations there'll be, but it felt to me as a screenwriter, it was a breaking through some kind of a ceiling to get to the next level. And I don't know, it felt good. Anyway, I've got a lot of writing ahead of me, and I'm looking forward to getting into it. Life is still busy, but I feel like I got a little emotional boost on the story writing front, and look forward to having more time to do that. And maybe one day I'll be courageous enough to share it here so that Jefferson can hear it on YouTube and not just when we talk in person. All right, guys, that's it for Bootstrap Cinema, where we don't know what we're doing, but we do it anyway because that's the only option. Toodles.